Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again with your late night creature feature. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where are you listening from tonight? Alone in your room? Driving through empty roads? Drop a comment and let me know. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's see what tonight's tale brings us. The Door. Chapter 1. The Closing Shift. Look, nobody wants to close a Walmart at midnight during a storm. Nobody. But the store on the edge of Black Hollow didn't care what you wanted. It sat where Highway 101 thinned out and the redwoods pressed in close, squatting on land that should have stayed empty. The kind of place you went because you had to, not because you wanted to. Corporate had built it there 15 years ago, and the town had been complaining about it ever since. The building didn't fit, never had. It was too big for a town this small, too isolated from everything else. During the day it pulled customers from 3 counties over. At night, though? At night the place felt wrong. The parking lot stretched out like an empty ocean, the forest pressed against the loading docks, and the lights flickered constantly, even when the weather was clear. Josh Townsend had been assistant closing manager for 3 years. 3 years of telling himself this was temporary. 3 years of his mom asking when he was going back to school. 3 years of minimum wage plus $2 an hour, and the sinking feeling that temporary was starting to look permanent. He was 22. He dropped out of community college after his dad died. Needed the money. Needed something to do with his hands that wasn't sitting in a classroom pretending to care about business administration. The job was supposed to be 6 months, maybe a year. It had been 3. Tonight, he just wanted to finish inventory and go home. The storm had other ideas. Rain hammered the roof hard enough to make the loose ceiling panels rattle in their frames. Wind screamed through the cart corrals outside, metal shrieking against metal like something dying. The parking lot lights flickered constantly, pulsing like dying stars. Power surged, died, came back wrong. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed and dimmed, painting everything in sickly yellow before snapping back to harsh white. The automatic doors at the front entrance had gone dark an hour ago. The whole building felt hollow, empty, like it was holding its breath. 4 people were left in the store. Josh, Maria Torres, first week on the job, still learning where everything was kept. Derek Mills, night stalker, 8 years deep and too tired to give a shit anymore. And Amy Wynn, closing supervisor, the kind of manager who actually believed the corporate training videos. They were scattered across the building, finishing the last checks before lockdown. Josh stood near the registers, double-checking the cash drawers. His vest was wrinkled and damp with sweat. The air conditioning had gone out with the first power surge, and the building was starting to feel stuffy, close. His phone buzzed. Text from Derek. "Power company worth a damn?" Josh typed back. Said they're stabilizing it. Finish inventory and we're done. Yeah, and I'm gonna win the lottery. Josh almost smiled. Derek had been at this store longer than anyone. He'd seen 3 managers come and go, 2 remodels, countless power outages. The guy had been a fixture here so long that Josh sometimes forgot he had a life outside the building. But he did. 2 kids, 7 and 9. His ex-wife had them during the week. Derek worked nights so he could have them on weekends. He'd shown Josh pictures once. Good kids. Smart. Derek's whole face changed when he talked about them. His daughter's birthday was next week. She was turning 8. Derek had already bought her a bike, kept it hidden in his storage unit so she wouldn't find it early. Josh's radio crackled. "Josh, you copy?" Amy's voice. Clipped. Professional. He keyed the radio. "Yeah, go ahead. How's the register count looking?" "Clean. Everything matches." "Good. I'm wrapping up the office. Meet me in the stockroom in 10. We'll finish inventory and lock down. Copy. Josh clipped the radio back to his vest and headed toward the back of the store. The aisles stretched out in front of him, half-stocked shelves pushed forward to fake abundance. That was the trick. Make it look full even when it wasn't. Corporate called it facing. Derek called it bullshit. Thunder rolled overhead, deep and low. The lights flickered again. Josh walked faster. He found Maria near the pharmacy, checking off items on her clipboard. She looked up when she heard him coming, and he saw the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. "Hey," she said quietly, "you think the power's gonna hold?" "Probably not," Josh admitted, "but the backup generator works. We'll be fine." Maria nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She was 28, but she looked younger, tired. She'd mentioned during orientation that she was new to the area. "Fresh start," she'd said. Didn't elaborate. Josh hadn't pushed. People came to Black Hollow for 2 reasons. They were born here, or they were running from something. Maria was definitely running. "You doing okay?" Josh asked. She forced a smile. "First week jitters. I'll get used to it." "Yeah," Josh said, but he wasn't sure he believed it. He wasn't sure he'd ever really gotten used to this place, and he'd been here 3 years. They walked together toward the stockroom. The back of the store always felt different, colder, the concrete floors, the industrial lighting, the smell of cardboard and plastic and something underneath it all, faint but constant, like wet rot that never quite dried. Derek was already there, scanning boxes with a handheld scanner. He looked up when they entered. "Power company says stabilizing," Derek said flatly. "That's corporate speak for we don't know what the hell's wrong." "Probably just the storm," Maria offered. Derek snorted. "It's always just the storm. You know why the power goes out every time it rains?" Maria shook her head. "Because they built this place on the cheap," Derek said. "Whole stores held together with zip ties and hope. Wiring shit. Foundation shit. Half the loading dock doors don't seal right. But hey, it passed inspection, so corporate's happy." "Derek," Amy's voice cut through from the office doorway. She emerged carrying a tablet, her expression tight. "Can we not do the doom and gloom routine tonight? Just finish your section so we can all go home." Derek rolled his eyes but didn't argue. "You didn't argue with Amy Wynn, not if you wanted to keep your job." Amy had been with the company 15 years, started as a cashier when she was 27, worked her way up to department manager, then closing supervisor. She wore her badge like a badge of honor. Believed in the system, believed that if you followed procedure, if you did things by the book, everything would work out. Josh had always found that kind of faith exhausting. "Register counts clean," Josh reported. "Maria's finishing pharmacy. Derek's almost done with dry goods." Amy nodded, tapping something into her tablet. "Good. Storm's supposed to clear by 2. We lock down. We can be out of here by 1. Thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to make Maria jump. The lights cut out completely. Darkness slammed down like a fist. Maria gasped. Derek swore. Josh's heart kicked into his throat. Then the emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in dim red. "See?" Josh said, trying to sound calm. His pulse was hammering. "Back up power. We're fine." But something felt wrong. The hum of the refrigeration units was gone, the constant background noise of the HVAC system, the buzz of electronics, all of it silent. The air felt heavier, stale, like the building had stopped breathing. Josh turned toward the back wall of the stockroom and froze. There was a door there. Gray steel, scarred and dented, no markings, no handle visible from this side. It sat partially hidden behind a stack of pallets, but it was there, solid, real, impossible to miss. Josh had worked this store for 3 years. He knew every inch of this stockroom, every door, every exit, every maintenance closet, every supply room. That door had not been there an hour ago. He was absolutely sure of it. "Hey," he said slowly, "you guys seeing this?" Derek looked up from his scanner. His face went tight. "What the hell?" Maria's eyes widened. Was that always there?" Amy emerged from the office, frowning. "Was what always where?" Josh pointed. Amy stared at the door for a long moment. Her frown deepened. She walked closer, her shoes clicking on the concrete floor. She pulled out her keyring, flipped through the keys like she was looking for one that might fit. "Maintenance access, probably," she said, but her voice sounded uncertain. "Old building. They forget to mark things sometimes." "I've been here 8 years," Derek said flatly. "That door wasn't there yesterday." "Maybe you just never noticed it," Amy said. "Bullshit," Derek said. "I stock this section every night. I know every inch of this wall." The emergency lights pulsed. The door seemed to breathe in the red glow. Josh stepped closer. The door looked old, really old. The steel was scarred and dented, edges rusted beneath layers of industrial gray paint. It didn't match anything else in the stockroom. No safety signage, no authorized personnel, only placard, no emergency exit markings. Just a door. Amy reached out and tested the handle. It turned. The door swung inward easily, almost eagerly, and warm air spilled out. Not hot, not cold. Stale. Like a room that hadn't been opened in a very long time. "There," Amy said, sounding relieved. "Probably leads to the mechanical room. Or an old storage area." "Then why isn't it on the floor plan?" Derek asked. Amy didn't answer. Beyond the door, Josh could see a corridor, concrete floor, low ceiling, industrial lights flickering in sequence, leading down into darkness. "We should call someone," Maria said quietly. "And tell them what?" Amy asked. "That we found a door we didn't know about? It's probably been here the whole time. We just never had reason to open it." "I don't like this," Maria said. "You don't have to like it," Amy said. "But we need to finish inventory, and that means checking every section of the building, including this one." Josh's stomach tightened. "Maybe we should just lock it and deal with it tomorrow, when the power's back on." Amy shook her head. "Corporate's going to want an explanation if there's an unaccounted space. Better we check now and document it." She stepped to the doorway. Derek looked at Josh. "This is a bad idea." "Yeah," Josh agreed. But Amy was already inside, her flashlight sweeping the corridor ahead. Maria hesitated, then followed. She didn't want to be left alone in the dark stockroom. Derek swore under his breath and went after her. Josh stood in the doorway, staring into the corridor. Every instinct he had screamed at him to turn around, lock the door, walk away. But Amy was his supervisor, and Maria was new, and Derek had been here 8 years and deserved better than to get written up for refusing a direct order. Josh stepped through. The door swung shut behind him. Chapter 2. The Door. The sound of the door closing was wrong. Too final, too heavy, like a vault ceiling. Josh spun around, heart hammering, and grabbed for the handle. There wasn't one. The inside of the door was smooth steel. No handle, no push bar, no emergency release, just a flat surface with a small placard bolted to the center. "Emergency exit only. Alarm will sound." But there was no alarm. No sound at all except the faint hum of machinery somewhere deeper in the corridor. Guys?" Josh said. His voice sounded strange, too flat, like the space was swallowing sound instead of letting it echo. Amy turned, her flashlight beam cutting through the dim red emergency lighting. "What?" "The door doesn't have a handle on this side." Derek pushed past him, tried the door himself. His face went pale. "Oh, that's great. That's just fucking great." "There's probably another exit," Amy said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. "This has to connect to something. Maintenance tunnel, loading area, something." Maria's breathing was getting faster, shallow. "I want to go back." "We will," Amy said. "As soon as we find another way out. Let's just stay calm and look around." Josh pulled out his phone. No signal. He'd expected that, but it still made his chest tight. The corridor ahead sloped gently downward, lit by industrial lights that flickered in sequence. Yellow hazard lines were painted on the concrete floor in places, worn nearly invisible. The walls were bare concrete, curved slightly inward, making the space feel compressed, tight. Bolted into the walls at regular intervals were metal placards. Old ones. Not motivational posters, not safety reminders. Warning signs. Unregistered personnel must be logged. Loose items create waste. Process completion is mandatory. "What the hell is this place?" Derek muttered. Amy was reading the signs, her frown deepening. "Looks like old safety protocols. Maybe this was part of the original building, before the remodel." "The store's only 15 years old," Josh said. "Then maybe it was something else before that," Amy said. "Factory, warehouse, something industrial." But that didn't make sense. Josh had lived in Black Hollow his whole life. He knew the history. The store had been built on empty land, clear-cut forest. There hadn't been anything here before. They moved forward slowly, Amy in the lead with her flashlight, Derek and Maria in the middle, Josh bringing up the rear. The corridor continued to slope downward, bending slightly to the left. The air felt wrong, thick, warm, like breath. Pipes ran along the ceiling, thick with condensation. Water dripped steadily, pooling in the corners where the floor met the walls. The sound echoed strangely. Drip, drip, drip. "How far down does this go?" Maria asked. Nobody answered. They passed another sign. "Efficiency is survival." Then another. "Incomplete shifts will be reconciled." "This is fucked," Derek said quietly. "We need to find a way out. Now." Amy's flashlight beam swept across the corridor ahead, catching on something metallic. A conveyor belt. It sat dormant against the left wall, its rubber surface cracked and stained dark. The belt stretched into the darkness ahead, disappearing around a bend. Mounted above it was a scanner array, the kind used for reading barcodes. Josh's stomach clenched. "What the hell is a conveyor belt doing down here?" he asked. Amy didn't answer. She was staring at something beyond the belt. A compactor. Massive, industrial, its metal mouth partially open, hydraulic pistons gleaming dully in the emergency lighting. Maria made a small sound in the back of her throat. "Okay," Derek said. "Okay, this is not a maintenance tunnel. We need to go back. Right now." "The door is sealed," Josh reminded him. "Then we find another door, or a vent, or we break through the fucking wall, but we don't go deeper into this place." Amy was still staring at the machinery. "This doesn't make sense. None of this equipment should be here. The building's not big enough. The footprint doesn't." She stopped, because beneath their feet, something shifted. A low vibration, slow, heavy, like machinery waking from sleep. The conveyor belt lurched once, stopped, then started moving, its cracked rubber surface sliding forward with a dry squeal. The overhead lights brightened slightly, flickering from dim red to sickly yellow. Josh's radio crackled, then cleared. A voice filled the corridor, calm, neutral, automated. Unaccounted labor detected. Maria whimpered. Josh yanked the radio off his vest, but the voice continued. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from everywhere, from speakers mounted in the ceiling, from the walls themselves. Manual reconciliation required. "Who is this?" Amy demanded. Her voice cracked slightly. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Silence. Then, "You clocked in." The machinery around them hummed louder. The conveyor belt picked up speed. Somewhere deeper in the corridor, something heavy clanged, metal on metal. Derek grabbed Josh's arm. "We need to move. Now." They ran. Not back toward the sealed door. Forward, deeper. Because behind them, the sound of machinery was growing louder, closer, and the corridor was filling with warm air that smelled like grease and rust and something organic underneath. The floor tilted slightly, guiding them forward. Josh's lungs burned. His shoes slapped against concrete. Ahead, Amy's flashlight beam bounced wildly, catching glimpses of more equipment, more signs, more corridors branching off into darkness. They rounded a corner and skidded to a stop. A break room. Small, perfectly clean, a table, 4 chairs, a coffee pot sitting on a counter, its light glowing red, fresh, hot. Mounted on the wall was a time clock. The old-fashioned kind, mechanical, card slotted in a rack beside it. 4 cards. Townsend, Josh, assistant manager. Torres, Maria, sales associate. Mills, Derek, night stock. Wine, Amy, closing supervisor. Maria started crying. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The voice returned, softer now, almost gentle. Incomplete shift detected. The time clock lit up, its mechanism clicking. Amy stared at the cards, at the coffee pot, at the perfectly clean table. "This isn't real," she said. "This is some kind of, I don't know, prank, corporate test. Something." "Corporate doesn't test like this," Derek said. "Then what is it?" Amy's voice was rising. "What the hell is this place?" The floor beneath them began to tilt. Slowly, deliberately, angling them toward the time clock. Josh stumbled backward, grabbing Maria's arm. "Don't touch anything. We need to." The conveyor belt was behind them now. It had followed them, tracked them. The rubber surface moved steadily, waiting. Derek's eyes went wide. "It's hurting us." "Shift reconciliation in progress," the voice said. And the walls began to move. Chapter 3. No exit. The walls didn't close in like a trash compactor. They shifted, angled, guided. Panels slid smoothly along hidden tracks, reconfiguring the space, closing off the corridor they'd come from and opening new paths ahead. The floor continued its gentle tilt, pushing them forward like water in a chute. Josh grabbed the door frame of the break room, trying to anchor himself. The metal was warm, slick. It vibrated beneath his palm. "Keep moving," Derek said, pulling Maria away from the time clock. "Don't let it corner us." They ran again. The corridor ahead was wider now, brighter. The emergency lights had shifted to full industrial fluorescence, harsh and white. More equipment lined the walls. Shrink-wrap machines, pallet jacks. Sorting stations with empty bins waiting to be filled. And more signs. Waste will be processed. All labor must be accounted for. Efficiency saves resources. Josh's mind was racing. This wasn't possible. The building wasn't this big. The stockroom was maybe 2,000 square feet. They'd been running for 5 minutes. They should have hit an exterior wall by now. Should have found a loading dock, an emergency exit, something. But the space just kept going, twisting, descending, expanding. like the building was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. "We're going in circles," Maria gasped. She was falling behind, her breathing ragged. "No," Amy said. She was still holding her tablet, its screen glowing uselessly. No signal, no maps. Just a blank screen with a spinning loading icon. "We're going down. The slope. We're descending." "Into what?" Derek demanded. Amy didn't answer. They passed another room. This one was different. A processing station. Stainless steel tables, scales, label printers, and in the center, a machine that looked like a large scanner, the kind used at airport security. Mounted above it was a sign. "Personnel verification required." The voice returned. "Step forward for scanning." "Fuck that," Derek said. They kept running. But the corridor was narrowing again, the walls sliding inward. Ahead, Josh could see the space compress into a bottleneck, forcing them toward a single doorway. They had no choice. They went through, and stopped. The room beyond was vast. A warehouse space, concrete floor stretching out in all directions, metal shelving units rising 20 feet high, loaded with shrink-wrapped pallets. Industrial lights hanging from the ceiling, casting everything in cold white. But the pallets were wrong. They weren't stacked with merchandise. They were wrapped in black plastic, heavy, opaque, and each one had a label affixed to the side. SKU numbers, barcodes, and names. Josh stepped closer to the nearest pallet, his stomach churning. The label read, "Henderson, James, Night Maintenance, processed. The 15th of March, 2018. EMP 0847. "Oh, Jesus," Derek whispered. There were dozens of them, hundreds, stacked on shelves that disappeared into darkness. Maria was shaking. "What is this? What the hell is this?" Amy walked slowly toward one of the pallets, her face pale. She reached out, touched the black plastic. It was cold, solid. "People," she said quietly. "These are people." The voice spoke again, calm, automated, almost pleased. "Inventory complete, awaiting new additions." The floor behind them rose slightly, a section of concrete lifting like a platform. It tilted forward, pushing them deeper into the warehouse, toward a section where empty pallets waited, fresh shrink wrap loaded and ready. "Run!" Josh screamed. They scattered. Derek went left, toward a gap between shelving units. Maria followed. Amy hesitated, then ran right. Josh went straight, weaving between pallets, his breath coming in short gasps. Behind him, machinery activated. The sound was deafening. Hydraulic pistons, conveyor belts, sorting systems coming online. And underneath it all, a new sound. Clicking, like claws on concrete, or metal limbs unfolding. Josh risked a glance back. Something was moving through the warehouse. Not human, not machine. Both. Limbs that bent wrong, too many joints, flesh wrapped around metal frames, skin stretched thin and marked with barcodes, a torso that opened and closed like automated doors, no face, just scanning equipment where eyes should be. It moved with terrible purpose. Efficient. Josh dove behind a pallet and pressed himself flat against the concrete. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might break his ribs. Across the warehouse, he heard Maria scream. Chapter 4. Processing. The scream cut off abruptly. Josh's blood turned to ice. He stayed frozen behind the pallet, listening. The clicking sound had stopped. The machinery hummed steadily, waiting. Then Derek's voice, distant and terrified. "Maria! Maria!" Josh forced himself to move. He crawled between the shelving units, keeping low, trying to get a visual on where the others were. The warehouse was a maze, pallets stacked high, aisles that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them, shadows that moved independently of the light sources. He found Derek first. The older man was pressed against a shelving unit, his face gray. He saw Josh and gestured frantically. Josh crawled closer. "Where's Maria?" Derek pointed. 20 feet away, in an open area between shelving units, Maria stood completely still. Metal clamps had shot up from the floor, locking around her ankles. Her arms were pinned at her sides, held by bands of steel that had emerged from a nearby machine. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was whispering, "Please, please, I just started. I need this job. I need—" A shrink-wrap machine hummed to life beside her. "No," Derek breathed. "Oh, fuck no." Josh started to stand, to run toward her, but Derek grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "You can't," Derek hissed. "Look." The thing that wasn't human and wasn't machine was standing 10 feet from Maria, watching, its scanner eyes sweeping over her in methodical passes. A printer on the wall activated. Whirr. A laminated tag slid out, dangling from a hook. Torres, Maria, sales associate. Processed, the 20th of December, 2025. SKU, AMP1847. The shrink wrap began to spin. Clear plastic coiled around Maria's torso, starting at her shoulders and working down, tight, mechanical, efficient. She screamed. The plastic compressed her chest. Josh heard something crack, ribs breaking. The sound was wet and sharp, like green wood snapping. Her sternum collapsed inward, pressing against organs that weren't meant to be touched. More cracks, smaller bones, faster. Maria's screaming grew higher, desperate. Her mouth opened wide, trying to pull air into lungs that couldn't expand anymore. The plastic wrapped tighter, around her neck, her jaw, squeezing. Her face turned red, then purple. Blood vessels burst in her eyes, spreading like red lightning across the whites. Her tongue pushed forward, caught between her teeth as her jaw was forced shut. The shrink wrap covered her nose, her mouth. Her screaming became muffled, then stopped. But she was still conscious. Josh could see her eyes, wide, terrified, knowing. The machine continued its work. More plastic, tighter, compressing her head. Her skull began to deform, flattening slightly at the temples. Blood seeped from her ears, from her nose, darkening the clear plastic. Her eyes bulged, the pressure inside her skull building. One eye burst. The socket collapsed inward, orbital bones cracking like eggshell. Fluid and blood ran down her cheek beneath the plastic. The other eye followed seconds later. The machine beeped. Cycle complete. The clamps released. Maria's body slumped forward onto the conveyor belt that had appeared beneath her, wrapped, tagged, processed. Her chest didn't move. The belt carried her away into the darkness. Derek made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. Josh tasted bile. He turned away, dry heaving, his whole body shaking. The thing with the scanner eyes turned toward them. Red light swept across the shelving units. Additional labor detected. Derek grabbed Josh's arm. Move. Move. They ran. The warehouse erupted into activity around them. Conveyor belts roared to life. Sorting arms extended from the walls like metal fingers. Scanners swept the aisles in coordinated patterns, searching. Josh's lungs burned. His legs felt like rubber. Beside him, Derek was gasping, his face red, one hand pressed to his chest. "There," Derek pointed. A door. Real door. with an emergency exit sign glowing above it. They sprinted toward it. Behind them, the clicking sound returned. Faster now, closer, the thing hunting them with mechanical precision. Derek reached the door first. He slammed into the push bar. It didn't budge. No, come on. He threw his weight against it. Nothing. The door was sealed, locked from the other side or maybe welded shut. Josh joined him, both of them pounding on the door, desperate. A sign beside the door lit up. Emergency exit. Supervisor override required. "Amy!" Josh screamed. "Amy!" The clicking was right behind them now. Josh turned. The thing was 10 feet away, close enough to see the details. The flesh stretched over metal framework, the barcodes branded into skin that looked gray and waxy, like it had been dead for weeks. The scanning equipment embedded where a face should be, red lights pulsing in rhythmic sweeps, limbs that unfolded and extended, multiple joints bending in ways that made Josh's stomach turn. Metal fingers, too many, at least a dozen per hand, each one tipped with something sharp and curved, like hooks meant to grab, to hold, to pierce. Derek stepped in front of Josh. His whole body was shaking, but his voice was steady, resigned. "Run," Derek said quietly. "What? No. Tell my kids," Derek's voice cracked. "Tell Jess to give them the bike. Tell Sarah her dad loved her. Tell them both I was thinking about them. Tell them." He turned and charged. The thing's limbs shot forward like striking snakes. Multiple points of contact. The hooks punched through Derek's vest, through his shirt, into flesh. Derek felt them go in. Cold metal sliding between ribs, puncturing lung tissue, one hooked around his collarbone from the inside. He screamed. The pain was white-hot, electric. His whole chest felt like it was being torn apart from the inside. He swung his fists anyway, pounding against the thing's torso. His knuckles hit metal, then flesh, then something in between that felt wrong, wet, cold. His scanner clattered to the floor. He grabbed one of the limbs with both hands and pulled, trying to wrench it free. The hook tore deeper, ripping muscle. Blood poured hot down his stomach, soaking into his pants. "Run!" Derek shouted. Blood bubbled at his lips. "Josh! Fucking run!" Josh ran. He heard Derek's last scream behind him, heard the sound of the compactor engaging somewhere close, the hydraulic pistons hissing like something breathing, metal grinding against metal. Derek felt himself being lifted, carried, the hook still embedded in his chest. He tried to breathe, but his lung had collapsed, tried to scream, but blood filled his throat. The compactor's mouth opened wide. He was placed inside. The walls began to close. Derek's last thought was of Sarah on her new bike, her smile, the way she'd hug him when he gave it to her. The pressure hit from all sides at once. His ribs broke first, multiple fractures, sharp ends punching into his organs. His liver ruptured, his spleen burst like a water balloon. Blood filled his abdominal cavity. The pressure increased. His pelvis cracked, his spine compressed, vertebrae grinding together. His skull began to flatten. He was still conscious when his brain stem severed. The compactor beeped. Cycle complete. Josh kept running, tears streaming down his face, Derek's last words echoing in his head. Tell them their dad loved them. Somewhere ahead, he heard Amy's voice. "Josh, Josh." He followed the sound. Chapter 5. The Time Clock. Josh found Amy in a maintenance corridor, smaller than the warehouse, lined with pipes and electrical panels. She was backed against a wall, her tablet clutched to her chest, her eyes wide and red from crying. "Where are the others?" she demanded. Josh couldn't speak. He just shook his head. Amy's face crumpled. Oh, God. We have to go," Josh gasped. He could barely breathe. His chest felt like it was being crushed. That thing, it's still... There's a way out, Amy interrupted. She held up her tablet. The screen showed a schematic. Building layout. I found the building plans in the system. There's a service elevator. If we can reach it, we can get back to the main floor. How far? 2 corridors over, past the break room. Josh's stomach dropped. The one with the time clock? Yes. Amy, that's where it wants us to go. I don't care what it wants. Amy's voice rose, cracking. I've worked here for 15 years. 15 years. I've followed every rule. I've done everything right. I've given this company everything. And this isn't fair. This isn't how it's supposed to work. The lights flickered. The voice returned, softer than before, almost soothing. Supervisor override detected. Authorization required. Amy's head snapped up. What? Personnel badge scan required for elevator access. Amy looked down at her badge, the plastic card hanging from her lanyard, then at Josh. Her expression shifted, from fear to something else. Hope. That's it, she said. That's how we get out. I just need to scan my badge at the time clock, authenticate my credentials, then the elevator will unlock. Amy, no. It makes sense. She was already moving, heading back toward the break room. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete. The system needs authorization. I'm a supervisor. I have clearance. That's how corporate systems work. You authenticate, you get access. Josh grabbed her arm. Amy, please. It's a trap. You saw what it did to Maria, to Derek. It's trying to... She jerked away. Her eyes were wild, desperate. You don't understand. I've given this company 15 years. I started as a cashier making minimum wage. I worked doubles. I covered shifts when people called out. I took the training courses. I followed every stupid policy in the handbook. I've earned access. I've earned clearance. The rules don't matter here. They have to. Amy was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. They have to matter. That's the deal. That's how it works. You do your job. You follow the rules. You climb the ladder. You get what you've earned. What you deserve. Amy, I deserve to get out of here. Her voice broke. I've done everything right. Everything they asked. Everything. She ran. Josh followed, but she was faster, driven by something beyond fear now, a need to believe, a need for the system to work the way she'd been promised it would. They reached the break room. The time clock was waiting. The coffee pot was still warm, its light glowing red. The 4 chairs sat perfectly aligned with the table, everything clean, orderly, corporate. The 4 cards were still slotted in their rack, except now 3 of them had red stamps across them. Processed. Only Amy's card remained unmarked. Amy grabbed it with shaking hands. Don't, Josh begged. Amy, please. I have to believe it matters, she whispered. I have to believe the work meant something. She slid the card into the time clock. The machine clicked. Gears turned. The card fed through. Chunk. The stamp came down. A receipt printed, curling out of the slot. Win, Amy, closing supervisor. Shift completed. The 20th of December, 2025. Total hours. Permanent. Status. Processed. Amy stared at the receipt. Her hand started shaking. No, she whispered. No, that's not, I just wanted to. The floor beneath her feet clicked. Metal bands shot up from hidden slots. They wrapped around her ankles, her waist, her chest. Not clamps this time, something more sophisticated. Scanner arrays. They lit up, red light washing over her body in methodical sweeps, head to toe, front and back, cataloging, recording, measuring every dimension. Amy screamed. Personnel verified, badge authenticated, processing approved. "I followed the rules," Amy shrieked. Her voice echoed in the small room. "I did everything right. Everything you asked. This isn't fair." The scanners completed their sweep. Data uploaded. A conveyor belt emerged from the wall behind her, sliding smoothly into position. The metal bands lifted Amy off her feet, laying her flat on the moving surface. She struggled, thrashing against the restraints, but they tightened with every movement, adapting, learning her resistance patterns and countering them. Josh tried to grab her, but the bands were already pulling her away, carrying her toward a doorway he hadn't noticed before. It slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing machinery beyond. Different than what had taken Maria. More precise, medical almost. Stainless steel, articulated arms, laser scanners, equipment that looked like it belonged in a hospital or a morgue. Processing equipment for management personnel. Enhanced preservation protocols. Amy's eyes went wide as she saw it. No, 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 no. I earned, I deserved. Her screaming became words that weren't hers. Instructions fed directly to her vocal cords by the system. Her mouth moved, but the voice was wrong. Flat. Automated. Badge credentials verified. Management tier processing initiated. Enhanced preservation protocols engaged. Subject will be maintained in optimal condition. Service record. Exemplary. 15 years continuous employment. Promoted twice. 0 disciplinary actions. Performance ratings. Exceeds expectations. Value to inventory. High. Preservation priority. Maximum. The articulated arms descended toward her. Needles. Tubes. Scalpels. The doorway began to slide shut. Josh caught one last glimpse of Amy's face. Her eyes. Still hers. Still aware. Still terrified. Still believing, even now, that if she just followed one more procedure, did one more thing right, the system would recognize her value and let her go. The door sealed with a heavy thunk. Her screaming stopped. Not because she died, because the system had begun its work. The break room fell silent. Josh stood alone, shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Bile burned his throat. His hands were clenched so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. The voice spoke again, quieter now, almost intimate, like it was speaking just to him, just for him. One employee remaining, shift incomplete. The time clock lit up. Josh's card was the only one left in the rack, unmarked, waiting. Clock out required for exit authorization. Josh backed away slowly. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely control them. "No," he said. "No, I'm not playing. All shifts must be completed. All labor must be accounted for. You are the final entry. The inventory must balance. Fuck your accounting." The floor began to tilt, gentle at first, then steeper, pushing him toward the time clock. The conveyor belt behind him started moving. Josh turned and ran. Chapter 6. Inventory. The corridor seemed endless. Josh's legs burned. His lungs screamed for air. Behind him, the building groaned like a living thing in pain. Pipes burst, spraying steam that scalded his arms. Machinery shrieked and ground against itself, metal tearing. The voice was no longer calm, no longer patient. "Employee Townsend, return to your station, complete your shift. Balance the inventory." Josh kept running. The corridor twisted, changed. The walls weren't sliding on tracks anymore. They were cracking, splitting open like skin tearing, revealing what lay beneath the concrete and steel. Tissue. Organic material. Pulsing. Breathing. The building wasn't just a building. It was alive. And it was angry. Veins ran beneath translucent membrane, pumping fluid that glowed faintly green. Muscle fibers contracted and relaxed, moving the structure. The walls breathed in rhythm with something deep below. And pressed into the flesh like insects preserved in amber were people. Hundreds of them. Their faces pushed against the membrane, mouths frozen open in screams that had no sound, eyes staring, tracking Josh as he ran past. Aware. Still conscious after months, years, decades. Each one had a barcode branded into their exposed skin. Each one had a SKU number printed beside their face. Each one had a date, a timestamp, the moment they'd been processed. Josh saw names he recognized. Employees who'd gone missing over the years. People who'd called in one day and never came back. Workers who corporate had marked as job abandonment and replaced within a week. All of them here. All of them still aware. A woman in an 80s-style cashier vest. Her name tag read Suzanne. Her face was gray, desiccated, skin pulled tight over her skull. But her eyes moved, followed Josh. Her mouth formed words against the membrane. "Help me, please, it hurts." A maintenance worker from the 90s, coveralls stained with old grease and newer blood. His chest was compressed flat, ribs visible through stretched skin. His hands were pressed against the membrane, fingers splayed, trying to push through, trying to escape. A night manager from 2 years ago. Josh had known her, Sarah Chen. She disappeared on a closing shift. Police investigated, found nothing. Corporate sent flowers to her memorial service and hired her replacement the next week. She was here. Her eyes locked onto Josh's. Still conscious. Still trapped. Her mouth moved. Run, run. Josh's stomach turned. The horror of it crashed over him like a wave. This was what the building did. It didn't just kill, it consumed. It processed workers into inventory and then absorbed them, added them to itself, their labor becoming literal, their bodies becoming structure. Their consciousness preserved as some kind of fuel, some kind of battery. The building fed on them, on their awareness, their suffering, their endless, screaming consciousness. The voice spoke again, but now Josh could hear it clearly. Not one voice, multiple voices, dozens, hundreds, all the processed workers speaking in unison, a choir of the consumed. "Employee Townsend, you are incomplete. You must be reconciled. You must be processed. You must become inventory. You must join us. Join us. Join the system. Become efficient. Become permanent. Join us." "Fuck you!" Josh screamed. "Fuck you!" He saw a pipe ahead, exposed, running with fluid that glowed faintly green, some kind of coolant, or preservative, or something worse. He grabbed it. The metal was hot. It seared his palms. Blisters formed instantly. He ignored the pain and pulled with everything he had. The pipe tore free. Fluid sprayed out in a pressurized arc. It hit the walls. The membrane hissed and bubbled where the fluid touched it. Smoke rose. The building shuddered. The faces pressed into the walls screamed silently. "Damage detected. Repair protocols engaged. Cease immediately." Josh grabbed another pipe. Bigger, thicker. He braced his feet and pulled. It came free with a shriek of tearing metal. More fluid. This time it sprayed directly onto the exposed tissue. The membrane dissolved. The flesh beneath blackened and curled. The building convulsed. The walls rippled. The floor buckled. Somewhere deep below, something screamed. Not the voice, not the processed workers, the building itself. a sound like metal tearing mixed with an animal dying. Pain made audible. Josh kept going. He found an electrical junction box, yanked the panel open. Inside were wires, thick cables, power lines running through the walls like arteries. He grabbed them with his burned hands. Sparks exploded. Electricity arced through him, his muscles seized, his vision went white, but he held on, healed on and pulled. The cables tore free. The lights died, all of them. Emergency systems tried to kick in but failed. Darkness slammed down. Then emergency red lights flickered on, weak, failing. The building was dying. Josh could feel it. The walls around him were bleeding, not blood, something else. Clear, fluid, mixed with oil and something organic, the building's version of blood. The membrane coating the walls began to dissolve, breaking down. The processed workers inside became more visible, more distinct, their bodies starting to separate from the structure. Some of them started to move, fingers twitching, mouths opening wider, eyes blinking for the first time in years. The building was losing its grip on them, its control failing. Josh found what looked like a main power line, thick cable running through the wall at knee height. He grabbed a piece of broken metal, jagged, sharp, used it like a pry bar, wedged it under the cable, pulled. The cable sparked, arced. The building convulsed again, harder this time. The floor tilted violently. Josh fell, rolled, grabbed onto a pipe to keep from sliding into darkness. Systems started shutting down around him. Conveyor belts ground to a halt with mechanical groans. Scanners went dark. Processing equipment powered off with sighs like dying breaths. The voice fragmented into static. Stop, must, cannot, system failure, error, inventory complete, must. The voice cut out completely. Josh pulled himself upright and ran through the dying corridors. Pipes burst around him. Steam filled the air. The walls were collapsing now, not physically, systemically. The building's control failing, its grip on reality loosening. He emerged into the stockroom, the actual stockroom, the one that made sense. The door was still there, the gray steel door, but it was different now. The metal was buckling, warping. Organic tissue was growing through the seams like roots through concrete. The building trying to seal itself, trying to heal the wound Josh had made. He didn't have much time. Josh grabbed a pallet jack, the heavy metal kind used for moving full pallets, solid steel, weighted. He rammed it into the door. The impact sent shock waves through his arms, through his burned hands, through his whole body. The door dented. Again. The metal buckled. Employee Townsend stop violation unauthorized damage cease. Again. The door bent outward. Light spilled through the gap, real light, fluorescent, yellow-white, normal, the stockroom lights he'd seen 1,000 times. Josh grabbed the bent edge with his ruined hands. The metal was sharp. It cut into his palms, into his fingers. Blood ran hot down his wrists. He didn't care. He pulled. The door screamed as it tore, metal shrieking like an animal in agony. The building shrieking with it, the processed workers shrieking, everything screaming as Josh ripped the door wider. The gap widened. Josh squeezed through. He fell. Into the normal stockroom, the real one, the one that followed the laws of physics. Behind him, the doorway pulsed. The tissue was growing faster now, trying to seal the wound, trying to close itself off. Scar tissue forming over torn metal. But it was too late. The damage was done. Josh scrambled to his feet. His hands were bleeding. His clothes were torn and soaked with sweat and blood and that green fluid that burned. He could smell smoke. chemicals, burning flesh, his own fear. He ran. Through the stockroom, past the registers, toward the front entrance. The automatic doors were still sealed, still dark. Josh grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. The metal cylinder was cold and solid and real. He hefted it, threw it with everything he had left. The glass exploded. Safety glass. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, raining down like crystals, like diamonds catching the pre-dawn light. Rain and wind poured through the opening. Cold, real, clean. The storm was clearing. Dawn breaking on the horizon. Josh climbed through the opening. Glass cut into his hands worse, into his arms, his legs. He didn't feel it. He fell onto the wet pavement of the parking lot, crawled away from the building on his hands and knees, got to his feet, stumbled, ran, made it to his car 20 feet away, fumbled his keys, dropped them in a puddle, picked them up with shaking, bleeding hands, got in, started the engine. It caught on the first try. Josh looked back at the building. It sat there, normal, just a Walmart. Lights flickering slightly in the breaking dawn. Rain washing down the walls. The broken window already looked wrong, like it was repairing itself. The glass growing back. But Josh could see the truth now. Could see the way the walls pulsed, almost imperceptibly, breathing. Could see the way the shadows moved inside, independent of the light. The building was alive, and it was hungry. And somewhere deep inside, 3 of his co-workers were being processed, preserved, added to inventory. Josh put the car in gear, drove away. He didn't stop until he was 10 miles down the highway. Then he pulled over onto the shoulder and vomited. Chapter 7. Morning shift. Morning crew arrived at 6 a.m. The storm had passed during the night. The parking lot was clean, puddles drying in the early sun, birds singing in the redwoods. The front entrance looked perfect. Glass intact, automatic doors working smoothly, no sign of damage, no sign of anything wrong. The day manager, Carol Henderson, noticed something in the parking lot as she walked toward the entrance. Someone sitting in their car, engine running, just sitting there. She walked closer. Josh Townsend, one of the night closers. He was slumped in the driver's seat, staring at the building. His face was pale, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. Carol knocked on the window. Josh jumped like he'd been electrocuted. His eyes were wild, red from crying or lack of sleep or both. She gestured for him to roll down the window. He did, slowly, like he wasn't sure she was real. "Josh, what are you doing here? Your shift ended hours ago." "They're inside," Josh said. His voice was hoarse, raw, like he'd been screaming. "Maria, Derek, Amy, they're all inside." Carol frowned. "What are you talking about?" "The door, in the stockroom. It took them. It processed them. We have to call the police. We have to." "Josh, you're not making sense. Are you okay? Have you been drinking?" "I'm not drunk." His voice cracked. "There's a door, gray steel. It appeared in the stockroom when the power went out. We went through it. Down into there was machinery. Processing equipment. It wrapped Maria in plastic. It crushed Derek in a compactor. It took Amy and there were people in the walls. Hundreds of people. All of them still alive. Still conscious. And... Josh," Carol's voice was firm now. Concerned. "I need you to calm down. You're clearly upset about something. Let me call someone. Maybe we should get you to a hospital. You might be having some kind of episode." "I'm not crazy." Josh's hands were shaking. "Don't go in there. Don't. It's not safe. The building it's alive. It eats people. It processes them. Carol gently stepped back from the window. I'm calling corporate, and maybe an ambulance. Just stay here, okay? No, you have to listen to me. You have to... But Carol was already walking away, pulling out her phone. More cars were arriving now. Day shift. Early birds who liked to clock in 15 minutes ahead to grab coffee and chat before the store opened. Normal people doing normal things. Living their normal lives. Not knowing what was waiting inside. Within an hour, corporate security was there, and a regional manager, and someone from HR with a clipboard and a sympathetic expression. They asked Josh questions. Where were the other 3 closing employees? Josh told them about the door, the corridor, the machinery, the processing, the voices, the bodies in the walls, everything. They took notes, nodded, asked follow-up questions. Then they searched the stockroom, every inch of it. There was no door, just a solid concrete wall where Josh kept pointing. They ran their hands over it, checked for seams, for hidden panels, for any sign of an opening. Nothing. They checked the building schematics, pulled up the original architectural plans, cross-referenced them with the current layout. No hidden spaces, no maintenance tunnels, no secret corridors. The building was exactly the size it was supposed to be. 2,000 square feet of stockroom, nothing more. They checked the security cameras. The footage showed 4 employees closing the store normally. Josh, Maria Torres, Derek Mills, Amy Wynn. At 12:47 a.m., the 3 other employees were clearly visible on camera walking toward the back of the store. Then they walked out the emergency exit near the loading dock. Together. All 3 of them. Got in Derek's truck. The timestamp was clear on the parking lot footage. Drove away. 12:47 a.m. The HR representative showed Josh the footage on a tablet. Josh watched in disbelief, in horror. That didn't happen. They didn't leave. They went through the door. Josh, the HR representative said gently, according to our system, all 4 of you clocked out at 12:47 a.m. Right on schedule. Clean shifts. Everything normal. I didn't clock out. I never touched the time clock. I ran. I broke through the door. They showed him the time clock records. Digital logs. Timestamps. 4 punches. 12:47 a.m. All 4 employees. Clean clockouts. Shift completed normally. No anomalies. No errors. No problems. The system was satisfied. They sent Josh home on medical leave. Stress, possible breakdown, trauma from something. They weren't sure what. Recommended he see a therapist. Paid leave for 2 weeks while they investigated. But there was nothing to investigate. 3 employees had quit without notice. Job abandonment, left in the middle of their shift. It happens sometimes. People walked off the job, stopped showing up, moved on. The store had to keep running. New hires were processed within a week. Josh tried to explain to the police, drove to the station, filed a missing persons report for all 3 of them. They investigated. They found Derek's truck at a rest stop 60 miles north. Keys still in the ignition, his wallet on the dashboard. No sign of struggle, no sign of Derek. Maria's apartment had been cleared out, packed up, like she planned to leave. The landlord said she'd mentioned moving, starting over somewhere new. Amy's credit card was used at a gas station in Oregon 2 days later, then at a grocery store in Washington the day after that. All evidence pointed to 3 people who decided to leave, to disappear, to start over somewhere else. It happened, especially in small towns like Black Hollow. People ran. People started over. People left their old lives behind. The police closed the investigation after 2 weeks. But Josh knew the truth. He'd seen it, lived it, survived it. And 1 week after the incident, he went back to the store, during the day, when it was busy and bright and normal. He had to see, had to know. He walked through the automatic doors. They opened smoothly. Normally. He walked to the stockroom. The wall was solid, concrete painted industrial gray, no seams, no cracks, no door. But there was a pallet in the corner, shrink-wrapped in black plastic. It hadn't been there before. Josh walked closer. His hands started shaking. The label read, "Closing crew, full count. Processed, the 20th of December, 2025. Bulk 4157. Quantity, 3. An assistant manager walked by. Young kid, maybe 20, saw Josh staring. "Hey, you okay, man?" Josh couldn't speak. "Yeah, that thing's been sitting there for a week. Nobody knows what it is. System says it's processed inventory, but there's no requisition order, no delivery record, nothing. Corporate's trying to figure out where it came from. Weird, right?" Josh backed away slowly. The assistant shrugged and walked off. Josh left Black Hollow that day. Packed his car with everything he owned. Didn't tell his mom where he was going. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Just left. Drove to Portland. Found a room to rent. Found work in construction. Outdoor work. Framing houses. Pouring concrete. Nothing with time clocks. Nothing with inventory systems. Nothing with corporate procedures. Nothing indoors. He couldn't work inside anymore. Couldn't handle enclosed spaces. Couldn't walk past big box stores without his chest getting tight, without his hands starting to shake, without seeing Maria's eyes bulging as the plastic compressed her skull, without hearing Derek's last words, tell them their dad loved them, without remembering Amy's face as she realized following the rules hadn't saved her. He saw a therapist for a while, tried to explain what happened. The therapist suggested PTSD, suggested medication, suggested that trauma could create false memories, protective narratives the mind constructed to cope with something too painful to remember clearly. Josh stopped going after the third session. He knew what he'd seen, knew what he'd survived, and late at night, when he couldn't sleep, he thought about them, about the moment when the plastic had wrapped around Maria's face, when Derek had charged the thing to buy Josh time to run, when Amy had clocked in believing it would save her. He thought about the people pressed into the walls, the ones who'd been there for years, decades, still conscious, still aware, still trapped, still screaming silently, forever. And sometimes, late at night, he drove past big box stores and looked at them differently. Wondered how many had doors that appeared when the power went out. Wondered how many employees had clocked in and never clocked out. Wondered how many buildings were hungry. Wondered if anyone else knew. If anyone else had survived. Most nights he didn't sleep well. And he never, ever wore a name badge again. Folklore note. This isn't folklore in the traditional sense. There are no ancient legends about retail spaces that consume their workers, no campfire tales passed down through generations about warehouses that process human beings like merchandise. But there are stories. Urban legends, mostly, internet forums, Reddit threads, Facebook groups for former retail workers. Stories about employees who disappeared from big box stores during closing shifts, night stalkers who vanished between camera sweeps, managers who clocked in one evening and never came home. Most of them are explained away. Walkouts, quitting without notice, running from debts or relationships or responsibilities. Job abandonment happens. Especially in retail, the turnover rate is already so high that a few missing workers barely registers as unusual. But some cases don't quite add up. The Walmart in Black Hollow, California, has had 17 employees disappear over 15 years. That's above the national average for job abandonment. Not enough to trigger a federal investigation. Not enough for corporate to shut down the location. Just enough to be noticed by people who pay attention to patterns. The building sits on land that was clear-cut in 2009, redwood forest, old growth. Before that, county records show some kind of lumber operation in the 1950s. Industrial timber processing. Before that, the records get vague, unclear. Some researchers digging through old archives have found mentions of a processing facility, timber processing, supposedly, built in 1947. But the building described in those old documents was much larger than any lumber mill should have been. The architectural plans don't match standard industrial designs from that era. The power requirements were massive, far beyond what you'd need for cutting lumber. The foundations went down 3 stories, into the bedrock. Why would a lumber mill need that? And then the records just stop. In 1963, the facility closed. Officially, due to economic factors. The lumber market shifted, jobs moved elsewhere. The building was supposed to be demolished, but there's no record of the demolition ever happening. No permits filed, no demolition company hired, no debris hauled away. The land sat empty for decades, grew over, the forest reclaimed it. Until 2009, when Walmart Corporate bought the land, clear-cut it, excavated for the new foundation. When they excavated, workers reported finding remnants of the old structure: concrete, metal, pipes, electrical systems, more extensive than any lumber mill should have needed. The construction supervisor recommended additional geological surveys, wanted to make sure the foundation was stable, wanted to know what exactly had been there before. Corporate denied the request, said it would delay the project. The building passed inspection. Construction continued. The Walmart opened in 2010. The first employee disappeared in 2011. Well, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terrific tale from the vault. Josh, what can I say? He thought he could escape. Thought destroying a few pipes and wires would stop a building that's been feeding for decades. But some machines can't be broken, some systems can't be shut down, and Maria, Derek, and Amy, they're shrink-wrapped, tagged, and filed away in the inventory. Just how we love it. If this story crawled under your skin the right way, hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every day at 8 p.m. Central, and trust me, tomorrow's even nastier. Leave a like if you'll never look at a Walmart the same way again, and drop a comment. Have you ever worked a closing shift that felt wrong? Ever seen a door that shouldn't be there? Ever heard machinery that wasn't on the floor plan? I'm always hunting for the next nightmare. Remember, if the building starts breathing, if your name appears on a time card you didn't punch, if a voice tells you your shift is incomplete, run. Don't clock out. Don't finish inventory. Just run. Until next time, kiddies, keep your eyes on the exits and never trust a time clock. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and the inventory is always watching.